The Galactic Council chamber stood like a fortress carved into the heart of the stars. Endless rows of glowing platforms circled the great hall, each filled with representatives of powerful empires. Their faces, scaled, furred, metallic, or alien beyond human shape, watched the center with quiet hunger. Above them, a giant screen showed the massive council fleet surrounding the neutral station where the humans had been summoned. Thousands of warships formed a wall of steel and fire, their weapons pointed like 1,000 blades at the small delegation ship from Earth. It was not a meeting. It was a warning. The message was clear: obey or be crushed. The human ambassador stood alone on a small circular platform floating in the center of the chamber. He could feel every eye staring down at him. Around him, the voices of alien delegates whispered in a language of greed and arrogance. They expected the humans to tremble. The council speaker, a tall alien with silver skin and glowing red eyes, leaned forward on his throne of crystal. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. Earth has grown too strong, he declared. Its resources, its weapons, its technology, all of it must now serve the Council. You will hand over your orbital defenses, your starship programs, and your energy production. Refusal means the destruction of your world. The chamber didn't erupt in outrage. It erupted in approval. Applause and dark laughter echoed through the great hall. For centuries, the Council had controlled weaker worlds this way. They demanded everything, gave nothing, and erased anyone who resisted. To them, Earth was just another small world to crush under their boots. But what they didn't see, what they couldn't hear, was the silence building far away on the blue planet itself. On Earth, deep beneath the surface in hidden command bunkers, world leaders and generals stood around giant holographic displays. Every word from the Council chamber was being transmitted directly to them. The alien fleet's numbers glowed on the screens. Thousands of ships, heavy guns, planetary siege weapons. Any normal world would be on its knees. But Earth was not normal. For 2 centuries, humans had watched the Council grow arrogant, watched how they bent entire civilizations into submission. And while the Council saw Earth as small, humans had been preparing in silence. They had been listening, building, waiting. The ambassador kept his expression calm, his hands steady. The speaker expected fear, maybe begging, maybe surrender. Instead, the human said nothing. His silence made the alien shift uncomfortably. It wasn't weakness. It was something else, something colder. The speaker leaned closer. Do you understand the consequences? His voice sharpened. Your world is alone. You have no allies. The galaxy stands with us. You will submit or burn. Around the chamber, several alien delegates laughed. They remembered the last planet that resisted. It burned in less than a day. Entire cities turned to glass. Billions died in silence. The Council didn't make threats it couldn't carry out. But this time, something felt different. The human's eyes didn't flicker with fear. He wasn't panicking. He was studying them, as if the entire Council was already a puzzle he had solved long ago. Far above the chamber, in orbit around the neutral station, the Council fleet shifted into tighter formation. Warships closed in around the human vessel, surrounding it from all sides. Their engines burned bright red. Each gun tower locked onto the small Terran shuttle, ready to fire at the slightest provocation. The Council loved this display of power. It was part of their game. Break the enemy before the first shot is fired. Make them kneel before the war even begins. But humanity had never been good at kneeling. Back on Earth, inside the Terran defense network, alarms had not gone off. No panicked evacuation. No desperate speeches. Only quiet movements. Commanders gave silent orders. Satellites adjusted their orbits. Cloaked ships shifted from hidden hangars into deeper shadows. Every corner of the planet seemed to hold its breath. It wasn't the breath of fear. It was the calm of something sharp waiting to strike. The Council speaker raised one clawed hand and made the final announcement. You have 1 cycle to accept our terms, he said. After that, Earth will be erased. The galaxy will not even remember your name. A long silence followed. It wasn't the silence of defeat. It was the silence before a storm. The human ambassador finally lifted his head and spoke in a low, steady voice. "Message received," he said. No begging. No screaming. Just those two simple words. Then he turned, walked off the platform, and disappeared into the shuttle. The chamber erupted in laughter. The speaker smirked, convinced that Earth would either surrender or be crushed like all the rest. They believed they were the ones holding the knife. But far away, beneath blue skies and silent oceans, Earth's hidden war machine was already waking. In the deep oceans, massive black warships stirred like sleeping beasts. In orbit, stealth satellites aligned their weapons. On the moon, old hangars opened, revealing ships that had never been seen by alien eyes. For decades, humans had prepared for this moment, not because they feared the Council, but because they expected it. On the Council screens, the human shuttle left the station and entered silent space. It didn't reply to the final warnings. It didn't turn on any defensive systems. It didn't show any fear. It simply vanished into the dark like a shadow returning home. Back in the chamber, the speaker sat proudly in his throne. "They'll surrender," he said with a confident grin. "They always do." But none of the delegates noticed the change in the atmosphere, the cold quiet that had followed the humans' exit. Other empires watching the broadcast felt it. Something about Earth's silence was not ordinary. It didn't sound like fear. It sounded like a loaded gun. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. Some species felt a strange chill. Humanity had been quiet for too long. Too calm. It was the kind of calm that came before something no one could stop. The Council thought their threat had broken Earth. In reality, they had just lit the fuse. And once that fuse burned down, the galaxy would learn exactly what kind of world Earth truly was. When the blackmail message from the Galactic Council reached Earth, the world fell into a strange, heavy silence. The transmission played on every secure channel, every military feed, and in every war room buried deep beneath the surface. The words of the Council speaker echoed like cold steel cutting through the air. "Obey the Council, surrender your strength, or your world will be erased." It wasn't the first time they had made such a threat. But this time, they had chosen the wrong planet. In the dark command center under the Rocky Mountains, the Terran High Command gathered around a circular table surrounded by glowing holographic screens. On those screens floated the image of the alien fleet. Thousands of warships, their formation tight, their weapons already pointed toward the solar system. The fleet looked like a wall of iron hanging above the stars, a silent warning of destruction. One general clenched his fists. Another simply stared at the glowing red lines of the Council's blockade. It was enough firepower to wipe out a dozen planets. But this wasn't a dozen planets. This was Earth. The president of the Terran Union stood at the far end of the table, silent and still. The Council expected panic, fear, or rushed negotiations. That was how most worlds reacted. They bowed quickly, trying to save themselves. But Earth didn't panic. Earth planned. For a long moment, no one spoke. All they could hear was the low hum of the underground generators and the steady rhythm of the encrypted transmission. Finally, the president spoke, her voice calm and controlled. "They think they can blackmail us," she said. "They think we'll bend like the others." Her eyes scanned the faces of the generals, scientists, and intelligence chiefs. "We've been waiting for this." One of the intelligence officers zoomed the fleet display closer. "They have 6 supercarriers, over 1,000 battleships, and nearly 20,000 smaller crafts," he reported. "They've placed them in neutral space, just outside our defense grid. If they move forward, they can reach Earth's orbit in less than 3 days. And they're broadcasting their message to the entire galaxy," another general added. "This isn't just about us. This is a show. They want to make an example out of Earth." The president nodded. "Then let's make sure they regret it." Across the world, underground networks came alive. Old defense systems that had been silent for decades began to hum with power. Nuclear bunkers that had once been relics of ancient wars were now integrated into a planetary defense grid unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. In orbit, stealth satellites turned, aligning their sensors with the alien fleet's positions. On the moon, Black hangars opened slowly, releasing swarms of small, silent drones that disappeared into the void without a single flash of light. In the Pacific Ocean, the water above a classified Terran Navy site began to bubble. A massive steel door opened beneath the waves. From the darkness below, a black warship rose silently to the surface, its hull swallowing the light around it. It had no identification marks, no name, no broadcast signals. It wasn't built to be seen. It was built to hunt. And it wasn't the only one. One after another, warships emerged from hidden bases around the world, rising like sleeping giants finally waking up. On the other side of the planet, hidden beneath the Sahara Desert, the Earth Fleet Command Center activated a code that hadn't been used in over a century. Red lights blinked along rows of armored corridors. Crew members ran into briefing rooms, pilots strapped into cockpits, technicians prepared launch sequences. The Council thought they were the only ones with overwhelming power. They had no idea how much humanity had been hiding. Meanwhile, in orbit around the Moon, the Shadow Array, a hidden network of human deep space sensors and stealth platforms, watched the alien fleet carefully. Every engine signature, every formation shift, every movement was recorded and analyzed. Humanity had learned long ago not to underestimate their enemies. Back in the underground war room, a younger officer finally broke the silence. "Do we send a response?" he asked. His voice trembled slightly, not out of fear, but from the weight of history pressing down on him. The president turned slowly. "Yes," she said, "but not the one they expect." A communications officer began typing on a secured console. Around the room, the air thickened with tension. No one doubted the Council's power. But they also knew what humanity was capable of when pushed. The Council thought they were holding Earth by the throat. In reality, they were standing on a blade. The alien broadcast continued to repeat across the galaxy. On distant worlds, alien species watched the message with pity. Many of them had seen this before. A proud civilization refuses to bow. The Council destroys them. That was how the story always ended. But something about Earth's silence was different. Other empires watching the feed whispered to each other. It wasn't submission. It was something else. The Council's arrogance was built on fear. They counted on their enemies breaking before the fight ever began. But humanity had lived with wars for centuries. Wars between nations. Wars against tyrants. Wars for survival. It had forged them into something the galaxy had never truly understood. They didn't fear war. They were built in it. In the great orbital shipyard hidden behind Mars, massive Terran battlecruisers prepared for silent launch. Their engines glowed dim blue as they slipped into deep space, moving without a trace. Hundreds of drones followed, forming swarms like black clouds drifting through the dark. These weren't the ships the Council had seen in diplomatic parades. These were the weapons Earth had kept in the shadows for the day they would need to fight not just to survive, but to teach a lesson. The president stood before the main tactical map. The alien fleet was still sitting confidently, their warships locked into their intimidating wall formation. "They want us to kneel," she said softly. "Instead, we'll show them who they're dealing with." The response Earth sent to the Council was simple. No threats. No apologies. Just 3 words: "We do not bow." Across the stars, those 3 words reached the Council chamber. The speaker's expression twisted with amusement and arrogance. In his mind, Earth had just signed its death warrant. But far from their control, deep within the solar system, humanity was already turning the galaxy's blackmail into the beginning of their greatest counterstrike. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but Earth was not the victim in this story. It was the storm that was about to arrive. And when the storm hit, no empire would ever forget it. The Galactic Council thought the silence from Earth meant hesitation. They believed their threat had cracked human resolve. But in reality, something far more dangerous was unfolding in the shadows. While the Council's warships sat proudly in orbit above neutral space, their admirals mocking Earth in private transmissions, the entire solar system was shifting beneath their notice. The trap had begun to take shape, not with noise, but with silence. Deep beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean, massive steel doors opened one after another. From the black waters rose Earth's hidden warships, vessels so advanced and so silent that the galaxy had no record of their existence. Their hulls absorbed all light, making them invisible against the darkness of space. They didn't carry banners or flags. These ships weren't built to impress. They were built to end wars. Their engines burned cold and quiet, sliding through the depths before launching toward orbit, vanishing into the void like ghosts. Far above, in high orbit, the shadow array came fully online. Dozens of stealth satellites spread their invisible webs across space. No alien sensor could see them, no scanner could pick them up. From their hidden positions, they mapped every inch of the Council's fleet, their formations, their movement patterns, their weak points. Each alien ship was labeled and locked, its behavior recorded down to the smallest shift in engine output. Humanity wasn't watching idly. Humanity was stalking its prey. Inside the Terran Defense Command, the room was dark except for the blue glow of holographic maps. A massive projection of the solar system hung in the air, covered in shifting lines of light. Each blue dot represented a Terran warship moving into place. Each red dot represented a Council ship, overconfident and blind. The two colors were drawing closer, but only one side understood what was really happening. One admiral leaned forward, tapping on a control panel. "Shadow Fleet Alpha is in position," he said quietly. His voice held no fear, only sharp focus. Another officer nodded. "Lunar defense stations are online. Martian launch bays are ready. Deep space mines are armed." The president watched in silence. This was not a desperate scramble. This was a plan that had been buried in Earth's veins for decades, waiting for this very day. The Council believed they were facing a small, rebellious world. They had no idea they were walking into a war machine that had been built piece by piece in the dark corners of the solar system. While the Council fleets broadcast their arrogance across the galaxy, human stealth frigates slipped into their blind spots. They moved behind asteroid shadows, beneath gravity wells, and through dead zones that alien sensors ignored. Their hulls didn't reflect light. Their drives were colder than the void. To the Council, nothing had changed. But in reality, the battlefield itself was being reshaped around them. In the black silence near the orbit of Neptune, a Terran strike group assembled. 12 warships hovered in formation, their lights off, their weapons powered down to avoid detection. Each ship was armed with experimental weaponry that the Council didn't even know existed. Their mission wasn't to rush forward in open battle. Their mission was to strike first and erase the enemy's advantage in a single, perfect move. Inside one of the Council's command ships, alien admirals lounged in their gilded chairs. They spoke with lazy confidence, laughing at how predictable humanity seemed. "They will surrender soon," one of them said in their guttural language. "They always do. They are only human. Soft. Weak." Their arrogance ran so deep they didn't bother strengthening their formations. They didn't know that their movements were being tracked with surgical precision. In orbit around Mars, Terran rail cannons began to warm up. These weren't the outdated weapons shown in diplomatic displays. These were hidden planetary defense cannons buried under layers of rock, invisible to anyone who wasn't looking in exactly the right place. Their barrels moved silently, locking onto targets thousands of kilometers away. At the same time, long-range missile platforms rose from underground silos around the planet, their engines cold and waiting. Back on Earth, inside the command center, a countdown clock appeared on the main display. Operation Eclipse. This was humanity's answer to blackmail, not diplomacy, not panic, but an invisible blade slowly pressing against the Council's throat. The admiral in charge turned to the president. "We are ready to execute on your signal," he said. The president didn't respond immediately. She watched the map carefully, her eyes fixed on the glowing red dots that represented the enemy fleet. The Council had no idea how close they were to being surrounded. They thought their size made them untouchable. They thought they were the hunters. But Earth had turned the stars into a trap. In the orbit of Jupiter, a massive cargo station suddenly shifted its orbit. To the Council, it would look like a random movement of civilian traffic. But hidden inside its hollow structure was a Terran dreadnought, a warship so large and powerful it was known as the Hammer. For years, the Council had considered dreadnoughts to be their own exclusive weapon. They were about to learn they were wrong. Across the solar system, military bases went silent. No outgoing signals. No visible movement. But every single weapon was locked on the enemy. The aliens didn't see it. They couldn't. They were too busy congratulating themselves for a victory they hadn't won yet. In the great council chamber light years away, the speaker leaned back in his throne, smirking as he read Earth's three-word response, "We do not bow." His advisors laughed. Such bold words for such a fragile species, one of them hissed. But far from their chamber, in the quiet dark of space, that simple message wasn't a threat. It was a promise. The first waves of Terran drone fleets launched in absolute silence. Thousands of tiny, fast-moving machines disappeared into the black, invisible to enemy sensors. They drifted closer to the Council's fleet like the incoming tide. No alarms. No warnings. The trap was tightening, one piece at a time. Inside one of the Terran warships, a young officer whispered, "They don't even know we're here." The captain gave a slight nod. They will soon. By the time the Council realized something was wrong, it would already be too late. Humanity wasn't reacting. Humanity was preparing to strike. And when the storm finally broke, the galaxy would understand why Earth never bowed. The countdown clock in the command center ticked lower. Satellites, railguns, fleets, drones, all locked in place like pieces of a massive, invisible machine. The Council fleet thought it was safe, powerful, untouchable. But it was already standing inside Earth's jaws. And Earth had no intention of letting it go. The Galactic Council waited for a surrender that would never come. For hours, their fleets drifted in perfect formation just beyond the solar system, broadcasting threats across every open channel. The speaker's voice boomed through the void like a knife pressed against humanity's throat. "Earth, you have one final chance. Submit and survive. Resist and burn." His words were repeated in every known language, not for Earth's benefit, but for the galaxy's. Billions of alien spectators across thousands of star systems listened, expecting humanity to finally bend the knee. No one had ever refused the Council and survived. No one, until now. In the shadows of Earth's underground command center, there was no fear. Just quiet, razor-sharp focus. Generals stood shoulder to shoulder, their eyes fixed on the massive holographic display of the Council's fleet. The president of the Terran Union stood at the center, hands folded behind her back, her face calm like still water. Around her, status reports flashed. Every defense grid ready, every satellite aligned, every stealth fleet in position. Humanity had been underestimated for too long. Now the galaxy was about to see why that was a mistake. In the alien flagship, Admiral Zareth leaned forward on his throne of black steel, confident that humanity would finally break. "Their silence is fear," he growled to his officers. "They are nothing without their pride." His second-in-command laughed, a low, guttural sound. "Let them delay. When the speaker gives the order, we'll reduce their blue world to ash." They believed their power was absolute. They believed humanity was isolated. They believed wrong. Then, without warning, something changed. The alien fleet's communication grid flickered. Their encrypted signals, the backbone of their entire formation, glitched for just a second. Then again. A third time. Their admirals barked confused orders, believing it to be a system malfunction. But deep inside Earth's hidden intelligence network, the signal jamming sequence had begun. Earth's cyber warfare division, long dismissed by the Council as primitive, had quietly taken control of their entire communication spectrum. "Phase 1 complete," whispered a technician in the war room, his hands dancing over a glowing console. On the map above, red dots, the Council ships, flashed briefly. Confusion was spreading through their formation like cracks in glass. The president gave a single nod. "Proceed." On the Council flagship, alarms erupted. Zareth slammed his fist against the console. "Find the source," he shouted. But there was no source to find. The jamming came from everywhere and nowhere. Invisible satellites hidden in asteroid belts, cloaked platforms near Jupiter, deep space probes that had been silent for decades. Now all of them were part of the strike. Humanity wasn't just attacking ships. They were attacking the foundation of the Council's confidence. Then Earth's answer finally came, not in words, but in a single transmission broadcast to the entire galaxy. A woman's voice, calm and steady, filled the void. "You don't blackmail us," the president said. "You stand before us." The message was short, cold, dangerous, but its impact was like a thunderclap across the stars. In distant worlds, watching species went silent. No one had ever spoken to the Council like that. On the alien flagship, Zaretha's expression twisted into rage. "Fire on their orbit," he barked. But when his gunnery officers tried to activate their targeting systems, they froze. Every targeting lock failed. Every firing sequence looped endlessly. Their mighty cannons were blind. Their fleet, so proud, so untouchable, had just lost control of its own weapons. Far below, in orbit around Earth, Terran stealth ships came out of hiding like wolves emerging from the mist. They didn't roar. They didn't signal. They moved with cold precision, engines silent, hulls black against the darkness. Their appearance didn't trigger alarms, because the Council's sensor networks were already compromised. They didn't even know the predators were behind them. In the Council fleet, panic began to ripple. "We've lost targeting control," one alien officer shouted. "Communications are collapsing. Something is interfering with our systems." The admirals didn't know it yet, but they were standing in a battlefield they no longer controlled. Back in the war room, the countdown reached 0. "Shadow Fleet is in position," a commander announced. "Railguns and lunar defenses standing by." The president raised her head. Her voice was calm, almost quiet, but it carried through the entire command center. "Then let's answer their threat." A moment later, the stars themselves seemed to shift. Dozens of Terran orbital cannons hidden on the dark side of the moon rotated into alignment. Deep in space, massive defense stations opened their hatches, revealing silent rows of kinetic slugs the size of skyscrapers. At the same time, stealth fleets positioned near the asteroid belt powered up their weapon systems. The entire solar system, once quiet, now pulsed like a heartbeat ready to strike. On the Council flagship, Zareth realized too late that something was wrong. One of his cruisers suddenly lost power, its engines going dark. A second ship followed. Then a third. Within seconds, several massive vessels were dead in the water. The fleet's perfect formation began to fray like a torn net. Then the first shot came. A rail slug launched from the lunar batteries cut through the void at a fraction below light speed. It didn't make a sound. It didn't glow. It just moved. The alien cruiser it hit didn't explode dramatically, it simply ceased to exist. The kinetic impact punched straight through its hull, tearing it in half before the crew even knew what had happened. Seconds later, another slug struck a carrier. Then another. The fleet was bleeding before it even understood it was under attack. The alien admirals screamed for counterfire, but their targeting systems were still jammed. Their commands vanished into dead channels. What had once been the most feared fleet in the galaxy was now blind, mute, and exposed. And then the Terran fleet spoke, not with words, but with fire. Hundreds of stealth drones swarmed in from the darkness like a storm. They bypassed shields, targeting engines, power cores, and communication hubs with surgical precision. Explosions rippled through the alien formation. Their bright red fleet began to fracture into chaos, ships drifting out of formation as fire tore through their hulls. Zaretha's eyes widened as his command ship shook. "This is impossible," he growled. "They are insects." "Insects don't." The ship lurched violently as another impact hit. The human fleet had struck faster than his mind could process. Back on Earth, the president stared at the map. Red dots flickered, shifted, and began to disappear one by one. A voice from the ops desk called out, "Council Fleet Command is collapsing." Another voice followed. "Their comm network is down. They can't coordinate." The president's eyes narrowed. "Good," she said. "Then they'll learn." In distant star systems, alien observers stared in stunned silence. For centuries, the Galactic Council had been the terror of the stars, the power that no one dared challenge. But here was Earth, a single planet, breaking their pride in minutes. The reaction was spreading across the galaxy like a wave. Empires that once looked at Earth with contempt now whispered in fear. Something had shifted forever. On the battlefield, the alien flagship burned on one side, its shields failing under relentless pressure. Zareth shouted orders, but no one could hear him through the static. His fleet was crumbling. And above it all, Terran warships moved like shadows, unseen until the moment they struck, precise and merciless. The Council had come to blackmail a small planet. They had found something else entirely. They had found the storm. The battlefield was no longer the Council's stage. It was a trap, and the trap had snapped shut completely. Their mighty armada, which had arrived in flawless formation like a wall of steel, now drifted in chaos. Some ships floated with engines dead, others spun slowly as fire and debris poured from their hulls. Their once perfect lines had turned into a sea of broken warships, colliding with one another in panic. The Council had always attacked enemies who were weaker, slower, and afraid. But this time, they weren't facing prey. They were facing a predator. And Earth wasn't just fighting back, it was tearing their pride to pieces. The alien flagship sat at the heart of the fleet, a massive beast of war, larger than any ship humanity had ever built. It carried a superweapon capable of wiping out entire continents. Its admiral, Zareth, had always believed that this ship was untouchable, a god of war surrounded by loyal destroyers. But now those destroyers were gone, swallowed by the dark. Zareth watched as his escort fleet burned one by one. Red lights flashed across his bridge. His officers shouted warnings in panic, their calm arrogance shattered. Shields down on Sector 7. We're losing power on our lower decks. Communications are still offline. The humans hadn't sent diplomats. They hadn't begged. They had surrounded the Council fleet with invisible fire. And now the hammer was about to fall. Far below, in orbit around Earth, the Nemesis rose from the shadow of the planet like a black moon. It was humanity's most powerful dreadnought, a warship so secret that even many Terran officers had only heard rumors of its existence. Its hull was built from an alloy the Council couldn't scan. Its energy output dwarfed anything the galaxy had seen from a single vessel. The dreadnought moved forward slowly, deliberately, its massive frame cutting through the void. As it advanced, the remaining alien ships fell silent, not because they saw it, but because their instruments suddenly stopped working. The Nemesis was a moving blackout. Zareth felt the shift. His crew stared at their dead screens as the dreadnought approached. No signals. No radar. No warnings. Only a creeping sense of dread. For the first time in his life, the admiral of the Council fleet understood fear. Back on Earth, inside the command center, every officer stood at attention as the Nemesis crossed into the battle zone. The president watched silently. No one needed to speak. This was the moment they had prepared for in the shadows for decades. Humanity had many weapons. But the Nemesis was not just a weapon. It was a message. Target the flagship, the admiral of the Nemesis ordered calmly. Massive energy coils along the ship's spine lit up with a deep, blue glow. The light grew brighter with each passing second, bleeding into the darkness like the heart of a star. Across the field, alien ships detected the energy spike, but it was too late to respond. Zareth barked orders to his crew. Fire the supercannon. Now! His officers rushed to obey. But when they tried to power the weapon, they realized their control systems were dead. Earth's electronic warfare had cut through their networks like a knife. Their mighty weapon was just a cold piece of metal. The dreadnought fired first. The Nemesis unleashed a single beam, a clean, precise strike that sliced through space like a blade of light. The alien flagship's shields cracked instantly. The second layer disintegrated a heartbeat later. The beam didn't stop. It punched through the flagship's hull, straight through its superweapon core, and out the other side. For a fraction of a second, everything went silent. Then the entire flagship shuddered violently as its core overloaded. The explosion that followed was so bright it painted the battlefield in blue fire. A wave of light rolled across the void as the Council's proudest warship broke apart in slow motion, its metal skeleton tearing open like paper. Entire fleets had bowed to that flagship. Entire worlds had fallen to it. Now, in front of the entire galaxy, it was nothing but burning scrap. The alien fleet was leaderless. The surviving ships, still jammed and surrounded, scattered in panic. Some tried to flee toward the edge of the system, only to slam into gravity wells waiting for them. Others fired blindly into the dark, hitting their own allies. Humanity didn't rush to finish them. They let the panic spread. Hundreds of Terran drones moved in next, swarming the remaining ships like black locusts. They attached themselves to engines, thrusters, shield generators, anything that made the enemy dangerous. One after another, the alien warships went dark. Some exploded from internal sabotage, others were left floating like corpses in space. In the alien council chamber far away, chaos erupted. The speaker and his advisors shouted over one another as real-time feeds from the battlefield filled the screens. Their proud fleet, the one they had told the galaxy would make Earth kneel, was gone. Their flagship was a grave. Their admirals were silent or dead. On Earth, the president stood with both hands on the command table. The holographic map above showed red dots flickering out one by one. The room wasn't filled with cheers. No one was celebrating. They all understood what this moment meant. This wasn't just victory. This was the day the galaxy's balance of power changed forever. The remaining alien ships sent desperate encrypted signals. Some begged for mercy. Others tried to surrender. Humanity didn't respond immediately. They let the silence weigh on them like a mountain. The Council had come to Earth with arrogance. Now they were the ones kneeling in the dark. The dreadnought Nemesis moved through the field of burning wreckage like a silent god. Its massive hull glimmered faintly as the last pieces of the Council's fleet drifted into the black. It didn't chase the survivors. It didn't need to. The message had already been delivered. In the final moments of the battle, Earth sent a single fleet-wide transmission. It was not long. It was not loud. Just a cold, calm voice that spread across the stars. Blackmail ends here. Every alien listening felt the weight of those words. The Council wasn't just defeated. They were exposed. For centuries, they had ruled through fear. Now the galaxy had seen that their power could be broken. By a single planet. By humans. As the last alien ship fell silent, the battlefield became still again. Wreckage floated where arrogance once stood. The dreadnought's engines dimmed as it returned to Earth's orbit, leaving behind nothing but ashes and silence. The Council fleet was gone. The storm was over. But the galaxy would never be the same. The war was over, but the silence that followed was heavier than any explosion. The stars above the solar system were calm again, but they watched over a graveyard. What had once been the most powerful invasion fleet in galactic history was now nothing more than twisted metal drifting in the void. Massive alien cruisers, shattered carriers, and the remains of their proud flagship floated aimlessly, their red lights dimming into nothing. The Council had tried to blackmail Earth into kneeling, but it was their own fleets that had been reduced to dust. The galaxy had never witnessed anything like it. Far below, inside the Terran Command Center, the giant holographic map that had once glowed red with thousands of enemy signatures now showed only fragments. One by one, the last remaining hostile markers faded out. Operators spoke in calm voices as they confirmed the end of the battle. All enemy contacts neutralized. No hostile signals remaining in orbit. The Council fleet is gone. The words didn't bring cheers. There was no eruption of joy. Instead, a deep, cold stillness settled over the room. They had won, but it wasn't the kind of victory anyone celebrated with noise. It was the kind that changed everything. The president stood at the center of the command platform, hands resting on the glowing surface of the war table. Her reflection shimmered in the faint blue light of the screen as she stared at the quiet map. She didn't smile. She didn't speak. She simply breathed slowly, knowing that this moment would echo far beyond Earth, far beyond this war room. The Council had thought Earth would bow. Instead, Humanity had broken their fleet like it was nothing. And now, the entire galaxy was watching. On the moon, in orbit, and across the solar system, Terran ships slowly returned to their stations. The massive dreadnought Nemesis, the silent titan that had erased the Council flagship with a single shot, drifted back toward Earth's orbit. Its black hull, still glowing faintly from residual energy, moved like a shadow returning to the dark. Drone swarms began cleaning up the battlefield, dragging alien wreckage toward containment zones. Terran science teams were already preparing to strip the technology apart, piece by piece. They didn't just destroy fleets. They learned from them. Every bolt and circuit would be studied. Every secret would be absorbed. In distant star systems, news of the battle spread like wildfire. Every corner of the galaxy had received the Council's blackmail message. Every empire had expected Earth to surrender or burn. Instead, they received something else. A live broadcast of the Council's pride turning to ash. Some governments went silent, unable to comprehend how a single planet had done what entire star nations could not. Others began whispering in fear. If Earth could destroy the Council's fleet so easily, what else were they hiding? Inside the Council chambers on their homeworld, panic reigned. The speaker slammed his claws on the table as his advisors shouted over each other. Screens filled with fragmented, broken signals from the fleet, then nothing. The invasion fleet was gone. Their flagship was gone. Their best admiral was gone. Entire decades of power had been wiped away in a single day. This is impossible, one advisor hissed. They're only human. They were supposed to kneel. But deep down, they all felt the same cold truth. They had miscalculated. And their miscalculation had shattered their image of invincibility. On Earth, cities across the globe lit up as the population received the news. People flooded rooftops and streets, staring at the night sky as if they could see the battlefield with their own eyes. They couldn't see the wreckage, but they felt the change. The fear that had once lived in every breath had lifted. Humanity had done what no one believed possible. They had faced down the greatest power in the galaxy and won. It wasn't luck. It was preparation. It was unity. It was the will to never bow. Back in the command center, the president finally raised her head. "Patch me through," she said quietly. Her voice didn't need to be loud. The entire Terran communication network went live. Her image would not only reach every nation on Earth, it would reach every alien world that had watched the Council's ultimatum. Her speech would be translated into hundreds of languages, broadcast across every open channel. The Council had made their threat public. Humanity's answer would be louder. When she spoke, her voice was steady and cold. "To the Council," she began. "You came to our world to demand submission. You came with fleets and fire, certain we would fall to our knees like all the others. You believed our silence meant fear. But it was never fear. It was patience. It was the sound of a trap closing around you." In Council space, the message played on every screen. Advisors froze. Soldiers stared. Entire worlds fell silent. "You thought you could blackmail us," the president continued. "You thought your power made you untouchable. But here, in the cold light of these stars, you learned something the galaxy has forgotten. Earth does not kneel. We never have. We never will." Her words echoed like thunder in a quiet room. "Your fleet lies in our sky, scattered and burning. Let it serve as a reminder to every empire watching. Do not mistake our silence for weakness. We do not start wars. But if you bring one to us, we will end it. Quickly." The transmission ended. Across the stars, the galaxy reeled. Some governments watched with newfound respect, others with fear. The smaller nations, the ones the Council had bullied for years, felt something they hadn't felt in generations: hope. If the Council could be broken, maybe their chains could be broken too. The larger empires sat in cold silence, reconsidering everything they thought they knew about the humans they had dismissed as primitive. In orbit, the Nemesis drifted like a monument to power. Its crew moved through quiet corridors, their faces tired but unwavering. They understood what they had just done. They hadn't just defended Earth. They had redrawn the map of the galaxy. The Council, for the first time in its history, was not feared. It was vulnerable, and every empire knew it. Down on Earth, people gathered in front of screens, listening to the last updates. They didn't need parades or victory marches. The stars above were their celebration. The blackmail that had once been meant to break their spirit had only revealed their strength. In the council's deepest chamber, the speaker sat alone, staring at the darkened display that once showed their fleet. His hands trembled. The terror he had once spread so easily across the stars now sat heavy on his shoulders. They had tried to make an example out of Earth. Instead, Earth had made an example out of them. Above the quiet, wounded solar system, a single Terran satellite transmitted one last message, short, cold, and unforgettable. Blackmail Earth, and you'll end up like them. The wreckage of the Council's fleet floated silently as the message spread across the galaxy. A warning, a promise. And from that day forward, the stars whispered a new truth. Earth bows to no one,